Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Sayyidina al-Mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So now we're going to talk about clever curry hacks in this episode of Nutri Bites. Now this is a thing, we all love our curries. If you've been raised in a household with traditional Asian cooking, it's really difficult to kind of get the same satisfaction from anything else. And the thing is that if you're raised on certain food, you likely have a palate for it. So changing that can be quite challenging. However, the good news is that there are some very simple and clever tricks you can do without compromising the taste or the quality of your curry, but actually turning your curry into a superfood, inshallah. So without further ado, let me share some slides with you. All right, so this talk is 5 clever curry hacks. Well, actually, I've got to be honest, it's 4 clever curry hacks, but I think 4 hacks is enough. And there's a bonus hack on how to get your biryani right. So the first one is potatoes. Now, if you look at most curries, they have potatoes. You have potato and spinach, aloo palak, you have potato and, all sorts of vegetables. Almost any curry has potato. So we have the potatoes in the curry, and then we have the rice or the naan on top. And what we're getting is a huge hit of carbs in that meal. So the easiest way is to just not put potatoes into the curry and substitute them with an alternative vegetable, ideally something that grows above the ground, and then you can have a small portion of rice, as we discussed before, or some bread with it. However, if you are a potato lover, then you could try destarching your potatoes. It doesn't get rid of the starch completely, but what you could do is chop and prepare your potatoes for 4 hours at least before cooking. So you would need to soak them in some hot water and then discard this water before you use potatoes in the cooking. This will enable you to get rid of as much starch as you possibly can. But again, I would reduce the quantity of potatoes in the meal. You could be creative and replace your potatoes with another root vegetable such as turnip, squash, sweet potato or pumpkin. I understand the Prophet says someone's very fond of turnip, so you could combine it with a sunnah intention. I would suggest that due to the nutrients living largely just under the skin, that you retain the skin of the potato. One, because of the fibre that it generates, which helps to keep the gut healthy and feed your gut bacteria, and also because that's where the vitamins live. Also, if you are going to go for potatoes, try and go for white or red potatoes, which are less starchy than some of the other more popular varieties. Okay, now vegetables. Vegetables and meat, vegetable curry on its own, vegetables in dal. Again, the principle is if you can retain the skin, so you can retain the skin for potatoes, most root vegetables. The only time you probably can't retain skin, it's very hard to think of where you couldn't retain the skin, but in fact the skin is so soft in cooking that you wouldn't even taste it. So you would keep the skin on the vegetables. Your aim is to cook the vegetables so they're slightly firm. They're not all mushed up and turned into puree. Alhamdulillah, we're adults, we have teeth, we're meant to bite and chew. What that means is the cell structure is kept intact and the nutritional value is kept, is maximised as much as possible. One way of doing this in the curry is rather than frying the vegetables to their death before you add them to the masala, is to actually create the base of your curry. So create the tomato sauce, and this would apply for any other form of cooking, not just curries. And then you add your vegetables. So if you are going to add potatoes, you can destarch them first, and any of your other vegetables. And then because the tomatoes and the onion actually have a lot of moisture, if you cook on a slow heat, you will find that you're probably able to cook in the base in the steam generated by the base itself. The key is to keep the temperature really, really low and have a good amount of base so the vegetables are able to cook. And that way you're much more likely to retain a larger proportion of the nutrients. And then try and use the whole vegetable. So we think, subhanAllah, that, only perhaps that the stem of the fruit or the actual body of the fruit or vegetable is nutritious, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed different phytonutrients and different blessings in different parts of the vegetable. So for example, if you have you have a piece of broccoli, don't just use a florets, actually chop up the stem, and you'll find that it adds a different kind of quality, different flavour, different taste, different texture to your meal. You don't waste it, and alhamdulillah, you get the full benefit of the food. Right, what about oils when we're cooking? Some of you might have watched the oil conundrum clip. I'm just going to revisit that briefly. So your safe oils are butter ghee, grass-fed butter, refined olive oil, coconut oil, and sorry, I've got olive oil twice, and coconut oil here for cooking. And of these, what you want to do is make sure that you're using moderate quantities, so you're not drowning your food. This is not an exercise in the amount of oil you can consume because I'm saying it's safe. It's about moderation, because all things in excess are harmful. And even if the oil is not harmful, all the excess calories you'll get, because that's, it's energy dense, will not support you in losing weight. So you need to keep it in moderation, use what you need to. And the other way to do it is to prepare your curry. So often many of us fry our onions at the beginning and we make up the masala, but did you know that you could do all of that at the end? And this is a very time effective and efficient way of doing things. So one way of doing it is that you could actually grind up, chop up your onions and grind up your tomatoes and garlic and ginger and all the bulk of your base at the start. Put it into the pan, put your spices in, and put the mains of your meal in, whether that's meat or if it's vegetables, you're going to add the vegetables towards the end of the cooking, as we discussed before. However, when your main body has cooked through, whether that's meat or your vegetables, you would then add the oil towards the end of the cooking, perhaps 5 minutes before you take it off the stove. And what that does is, especially if you're using something like olive oil, it retains the nutritional value, it keeps it at a lower heat point, and it keeps it more stable. And it doesn't affect the taste at all. So there are two ways of doing it. You can either do it at the beginning, or you can save the oil till the end, and both are fine. So a bit of Ayurveda here. But superfoods that you can add to your curry. How do you make a super healthy curry? So we switch from Mediterranean to Asian diet, and we make it good and healthy for us. So we have some amazing herbs and spices that we tend to put into our food. I've listed a few of them here that we could consider adding, or that we probably already do add, and there are more, of course. But of these, of course, you want to keep all things in moderation. So of the superfoods, we have, again, we have to keep the moderation. We have cinnamon, which is, very, very good for fighting infection and boosting immunity. We have fennel, which is really good for settling the stomach. Black seed, galwinji, which the Prophet said is a cure for every disease apart from death, and that's in Bukhari. We have turmeric, which contains curcumin, and we said before about using that with black pepper. And fenugreek, methi. Fenugreek is excellent for breastfeeding women. It helps to boost the milk supply. It's also good for male sexual function in terms of increasing testosterone levels. Fennel likewise is very good for women who are going through menopause symptoms. It seems to help to balance out the hormones. So all in all, our food is medicine, inshallah, if we use it correctly. The other one that we tend to use, obviously, to garnish our food is often coriander, and coriander is, again, very, very rich in nutrients. So this is what amazes me, and I've said this many times before, but it's these little things that we overlook that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put so much healing in. These little things that we underestimate, yet, it's that He teaches us through the examples of some of these things. Okay. And here's your bonus slide. This is about rice dishes and biryani. So you're a rice lover. What do you do about it? So firstly, as I said before, you could switch to brown rice. Now, brown rice can be an acquired taste, especially if it's plain boiled brown rice. Although it works much better in a palau capacity, you tend not to notice the difference so much. But if you really can't manage brown rice, you could consider, combining 50% brown rice with 50% white rice. You could use coconut oil in the cooking. As I said, that this changes the quality of the resistant starch so that it's much lower in carbohydrates. And you could try creating variety by adding in some wild rice strains. Now, wild rice is completely different. It's disputed as to whether it might even be a rice. It may be a grain, but it's high in protein, high in fibre, and high in sort of phytonutrient plant vitamins and minerals. And it looks very, very elegant and sophisticated in your meals. So there we go. These are my 5 tips for your curry hacks, inshallah, how to turn your greasy curry into a superfood. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.